15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Is that Shakespeare?
Nope, it's Geico.
Yeah, that's Shakespeare from one of his unpublished works. Oh, it be not for awakening. Nay, giveth thou the berries. For 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Nope, it's from Geico, because they help save people money.
Well, I hate to break it to you, but Geico got it from Shakespeare.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Today is nonstop. And suddenly, your checking account is overdrawn. But what if we gave you more time on that one? At Huntington, if you accidentally overdraw your account by $50 or less, we've put a $50 safety zone in place, so you won't be charged an overdraft fee. It's one more way we're looking out for you, so you can have time for what matters most. Huntington, welcome. $50 safety zone does not apply to returned items. Your account will be automatically closed if it remains negative for 60 days. Learn more at huntington.com/safety zone.
All right, it's another film study. You didn't think we were going to just leave you with the defense. We got to do the offensive roster evaluation. So we're going to dig right into that. Ken, welcome back. Brian, you're back as well. Guys, why don't we just jump right back into it? I think we did all the intro setup. I mean, we even talked about David Coley on the last episode. Now we can just kind of look ahead.
People listen to that last one. Great episode as always with Brian. Brian, thanks for joining us again.
Absolutely.
And we'll jump right in. We got these 5 categories. You're familiar with them by now. The offense, a much rosier picture in terms of younger players who are really producing for the Ravens. Guys on their first contract who are playing at a starter level, in some cases well above that. There are 7 guys I think we can identify and probably agree on the Ravens. Some might say more. Mark Andrews, Bradley Bozeman, Marquise Brown, Orlando Brown, J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, and Lamar Jackson. Who would you like to talk about on that list? I think the second name is one of the interesting ones to me, but there's a lot of contract figuring that is going to be a lot of the Ravens' future within that 7-man group.
Yeah, I mean, it's the benefit of having a really good draft, and in fact, because they were all on one side of the ball that year. Mm-hmm. So now they're all up for deals, and I'm not sure you're going to have to pick and choose. From a contract standpoint, I think Orlando Brown is probably the least likely to return. Mm-hmm. It's great to have bookends, and I know he's a legacy, sort of, with his dad being here, although his dad left for better money at one point too. So, but he played, relatively well at left tackle. So, and left tackles make more money than right tackles. So, will that be enough to have somebody, if he hits the market, or I'm sure his agent's going to say, look, you lost Stanley and you had somebody who could slide over there, and that's more valuable than just plain right tackle money. Mm-hmm. So I think it was going to be tough to pay top of the market for 2 guys anyway. But I think that makes him even more valuable to another team. And, he was a left tackle in college. Maybe he wants to be a left tackle. So, I think that's probably, from the contract standpoint, I think when you're looking at Andrews and Lamar and Orlando and then Bozeman, I mean, those guys are all, in the same class. And you got Lamar for a year longer, technically. But, I think I think Brown's probably the one of the 3 that is most likely to go. I think you mentioned I know you love early deals, and I know DeCosta's talked about early deals, so I could see where Bozeman could fit into that category. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be the question. Is what would be the number right now for Bradley Bozeman? He's earned a pay scale upgrade, or did not do it?
Yes, he did. He went up one level like Elliott did. So he jumped to 2.183. Brown and Andrews, by virtue of making a Pro Bowl on the first ballot, Brown this year, Andrews last year, they jumped to 3.84. So that again, replacing that restricted free agent tender from the old days, and this new CBA last year's the old CBA was just up to the one level, but the new CBA creates a second level and a third level, and Pro Bowl bid jumps you to the third level. So Brown, by making it this year, jumped up that high.
I agree with all your comments, by the way, on Brown, so I'm not going to duplicate them in terms of the risk of them losing him or the likelihood. What's really surprising about him, though, is that only about 11, 12 weeks ago at this point, we had no real idea whether Orlando Brown could play left tackle or not. I mean, he basically had not done that. He moved over there, used his length extremely well to block 12 to 6, get guys around the pocket, which is something, an adjustment that bigger, slower tackles, just often have a lot of trouble doing. He didn't get, the other thing we've seen in other years is big tackles, monolithic left tackles. I'm thinking about McKinney in particular, was a guy who would get really abused by shorter edge rushers, and having Harrison in the same division, James Harrison, was a real problem in terms of him creating holding call after holding call against players like that.
Yeah. I mean, they always, casual fans, and you always hear, anybody, you can just move the guys around. But if you hear players and coaches talk about it, it's different steps, it's different hand placement, it's different body placement. Now obviously Brown had done it in the past, but other than maybe a few practices here and there, and I don't even know if they had him practicing at left tackle ever, because usually they don't like to make that change. Especially in game. They will just have somebody else come in and not mess two positions up, so to speak. But now, obviously, once they got a chance to practice, then they moved him over. But I just, unfortunately, I think that unless he's willing to take a big old hometown discount, so to speak, I think that that means he's probably done for the Ravens. And people talking about trading him now and things like that. And if they had a legitimate backup right tackle, I would say maybe it's worth it, but I don't see that on the roster now.
Let's forget exactly what the alternative is at right tackle for the Ravens. What about the notion that the Ravens are going to get 2 number ones? How can they pass that up?
Right. Yeah. Well,
you hear that all over Twitter, like every day. Well, it's going to be 2 number 1 picks.
Right, because Houston made a crazy trade for Tunsil, and therefore that's market value now.
Right.
Yeah, no, that doesn't work that way.
As people learn from touching the stove and picking up a red hot horseshoe or whatever. Let's get back to Bradley Bozeman for a moment, though. If you had to guess at a number that might be reasonable now, especially with the escalation, is 3 years, $9 million in the range at all, or do you think his agent would say no way in hell at this point?
3 years, $9 million total?
Yeah.
Okay. No, he would say no.
Okay.
I think since he's got another year, and it's going to be interesting, the interplay of with extensions, things like that. Same with Lamar and Andrews and Brown. Are players going to be willing to? Now the Ravens might. I don't think it'd be 3 for $9, but I could see the Ravens going to him and saying, "Let's lock you up early." Because you're probably going to the teams will get a better deal this year. Now the premium guys maybe not so much, but guys like Bozeman, he may be able to get a good deal out of. But it's our agents also with Lamar, it's going to be okay. Well, we just don't have a lot of cap space, so we have to structure it this way. We'll try to make it as best we can, but Lamar's agent may say, well, you know what? We'll play for the small salary next year, or this coming year, and we'll wait till next year. And if the TV money's come in and everything's flush, the cap goes bonkers, then we can go bonkers because we can go, we can look at percentage of the cap sort of arguments and things like that we can't use now, So it'll be interesting to see how that interplay of, will agents really, Lamar and his agent might just say thanks, but we'll just sit it out this year and we'll wait.
Yeah, I mean, there's the fact that Mahomes and Watson are already signed to these mega deals. I'm trying to think of who else is in the category, but they're the worst two in terms of big deals. Mahomes is worth it. Watson is probably worth it. Well,
Goff and Wentz the year before aren't.
We're not worth it.
Yeah,
yes.
and as it turns out, so. So that's been the progression that the top guys get their deals. At this point, well, Josh Allen, so you got Mayfield, Allen, and Lamar basically. Who's going to push the market? That's the other thing. I don't think even as well as Allen played this year, and certainly not Mayfield, they're not going to push the market on Lamar. Lamar's his own guy, so I mean he's looking at Watson, and I don't think either of those guys are going to top Watson. Josh Allen, after 1 year, I don't see that.
Right.
I mean, he could come close to Watson, but so Lamar's agent doesn't have anybody to say I'm going to wait on either. Whereas the other guys might want to wait, and that's sometimes the way the agents play it. We're going to wait this out and see what the next guy does, and then that'll push the market for us. But so there's no reason necessarily other than Lamar says I want to be here and I want to get it done. To push it this year, perhaps his agent's probably saying hold off. Let's wait till we see where the cap goes, especially because then we expected by next year we'd have the TV money, not this coming season, but by 2022, the TV money will be coming in, and that's still a variable, especially now because is the TV money going to be the same?
Right. So the question to me would be is what's the true market value of Lamar Jackson this year? And obviously it's whatever anyone will pay for him, and only the Ravens can negotiate with him now. So it's not a free market.
Right.
Okay. But it is a case where if you're talking percentage of cap, even over multiple years, that the number Jackson would get would be significantly less than what Mahomes or Watson has got, even if you made the argument that he's every bit as good as both of them.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, so that's something for at least for deals like that. Now for the lesser deals, maybe the same thing. I mean, Bozeman has another good year, and he hits the free agent market next year. Same with Andrews, same with Brown. It's just 1 year they have to worry about, and they're going to be a free agent, and as long as they play well, they're going to get paid handsomely by somebody. Mm-hmm. So I could see those kind of deals being harder to get this year, and your top guys. I mean, those three of those, are, counting Lamar, three of the four are top guys pretty much. Bozeman may be a little more, I want security, things like that. But, and the market might be depressed for him anyway, to an extent. Mm-hmm. So he might be a guy you get, but the others are going to be harder to get, I think, just because it's going to be hard to fit him under the cap.
Yeah, one of the guys who got taken off this young producer list this time around was Matt Skura. Now, he was playing well early in the season, blocking well, frankly, and he blocked well pretty much through the season. That wasn't a problem. It was the snaps, and that obviously tremendously reduces his value, him being a center and all. But I still think he's a player who could be of value, but he's also a cautionary tale in terms of what can happen to a fourth-year player in terms of injury, and somebody the Ravens would point to say, hey, you don't want to end up like that, Bradley. Take the money now. Yeah. It's generational wealth, and and to be honest, $10 million after taxes, $5 million. It's not generational wealth in the way most finance people think of it. No. I mean, people in finance, they want to make $25 million in their career, and literally, this next contract is going to probably be 65% of what Bradley Bozeman makes in his career in an expected world.
Yeah,
reasonably, yeah. Boy, it's certainly a tough call for him personally, and I hope guys are not guided with an iron fist by their agent under these circumstances that says, I can get more. Because the agent should be neutral to it. He should be figuring the risk of injury as well. The player just may be discounting that risk, willing to discount greater for that because the risk is his personally, as opposed to the agent making a gamble on any number of players that he has in his stable.
Yeah, and the NFLPA has a say in it too, especially the big deals. I mean, because obviously the next deal drives the next deal drives the next deal drives the next deal, and pushes things higher. So when guys are taking less, now Bozeman may be in that category that they're not as concerned about. It's not the big deal, but certainly the agents, and the agents can be tied pretty closely to the NFLPA a lot. So, they want to know what's going on with these bigger contracts. So Bozeman may not certainly be in that category, but, the lesser, rarely do you see anybody taking a hometown discount, though. I mean, that's really the bottom line is rarely does that happen.
Right. I'm again, I don't think it's a hometown discount. I think this is a divisible benefit for injury and lifetime security. And, there's I don't want to go into it. It's too much story for the payoff. So we'll drop it. Anybody else on this initial list? J.K. Dobbins is really the only other young guy. Gus Edwards, you think there's any chance they sign him to a second contract with the Ravens?
I doubt it. And obviously, he's a restricted free agent. He's going to get the second round tender. So that's a nice payday for him. He's going to be, most teams are going to more of a committee approach. So, I guess there's something to be said for nobody's, you're less likely to get that top dog money because most teams aren't paying that top dog money. You know what I mean? You got the cautionary tales, Barkley.
All of them.
All of them, yeah. Pretty much, yeah. I'm not sure who's, Elliott hasn't.
Henry is probably the only one who really made good so far, and that's 1 year.
That's the first year, right. Right. So, that's something you're going to have, I don't know. I get the feeling he's going to be gone, but certainly, there's no, it's Dobbins, and I'm not sure Hill's going to be much of anything, for the future. So they are going to need a new big back, but they've been pretty good at, Edwards came off the street, he was undrafted free agent, and a lot of teams you're getting 5th round and 6th round and undrafted free agents. So my guess is they kind of stock up on those this year. And
you look back at Collins, Forsett. They've had a lot of success finding treasure in other people's trash.
And if they obviously Lamar changes the dynamic there too because they have to pay so much attention to him that that helps the running back because that hesitation by the defense, and if you hit the hole, then that's all that matters.
All right, let's keep moving here. I think we've said enough about the young producers, and obviously there's an entire contract tangle there. Let's move on to the developmental group. Always the most exciting group to me because these are the guys. They're still on their first contract. They might move up in class. They might move down. They're those $11,000 claiming horses or allowance horses, us being a Maryland, that have a chance to move up and become stakes horses, or they have a chance to be moved down and be $2,000 claiming horses if things don't work out. 11 players in this group. Well, let's start with the number one, who I think is one of the most interesting, is Miles Boykin. Obviously done a lot as a run blocker, has not expanded his role as a receiver the way the Ravens would have hoped in year 2.
Yeah, they were expecting a big jump. Obviously, it didn't happen. Certainly, for a while, it seemed like Lamar didn't have any confidence in him. That seemed to get a little better as the season went on. But these days, a wide receiver drafted in the 3rd round can, explode. It used to be that, even first rounders took a year or two to really get, and now, they hit the ground running. You look at Claypool, was also a 3rd round pick, also Notre Dame, both tall. Claypool's got a little more girth to him. But, you got maybe, again, they didn't have the off season and things like that. That's when that big jump is supposed to happen, when you get them in for, that off season, get them in there from March on as opposed to June on, so. Hopefully this year, that fixes itself, but they certainly need him. Whether they go out and get another receiver, I know you weren't for this year. You're not for that. DaCosta made it. He kind of poo-pooed that, although that could have been just the liar's lunch sort of approach that we don't want anybody to think we're going to. I would have to think they're going to bring a veteran in. It's just a matter of how.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it as long as it's at the bargain level. And I'd like it to be a 26, 27-year-old guy and not a 33-year-old guy again.
Right.
Do we need another Frank Sanders? Do we need another Marcus Robinson, even though he did have one great game for the Ravens? I mean, all of these guys. I always tell the story sometimes when we get talking about Frank Sanders. His third catch, I believe it was, of the 2003 season after he was acquired from Arizona was the 500th of his career. They announced it over the loudspeaker. I've never been more underwhelmed by any event at a football game. It's like we missed 497 of this while he's playing the NFC West.
Right.
Don't foist this on us. All right. A group of three players I want to talk about together here are three guys who I think all fit into the center category potentially going up next year. Actually, it's three. Ben Bredeson, who played well in 41 snaps but doesn't have any center experience so far. Patrick McCary. Talk a little bit about him, but his aggregate grade was a D at guard, a C at center, a B plus and a half of experience at right tackle. Don't think that would hold up, by the way, but it is what it is. I want to give him credit for it. And then the third one is Tristan Colon Castillo, who they protected him. They made a special deal to bring him on the roster, but he played okay in 2 games. How do you see that group playing out?
I don't know. My feeling is if there is an unexpected, and I'm not saying it's totally unexpected, free agent signing, it would be at center. Especially because the top 2 you've had this year had troubles with their snapping, and as we saw the Pittsburgh game against Cleveland in the playoffs, and they sailed that could be just devastating, and it can just change the whole complexion of a game.
They're drive killers.
And we certainly had a couple of those as well. Lamar made something out of some of them, and but still. So that to me, if they brought on, if there's one big free agent signing, and I'm not sure it's a big one necessarily, because I'm not sure I guess the Green Bay center's out there perhaps, but he's probably the best one, which I would qualify as big. But if it's not, I still think there's a pretty decent chance that the starting center is not on the roster right now, or amongst these names.
Right. We didn't even include Matt Skura in this group, and I don't think there's a 0% chance that he's back. Whatever the problems were, all 4 of these guys need to be working with whoever they need to work with. Sports psychologists maybe in some cases, but whatever it takes to get their snaps right. You know who I think would be really good at teaching this are long snappers. It's a different snap, but it's something that long snappers can snap the car through a moving car window at 25 feet. Get them to teach you how to make a shotgun snap.
Yeah. Now, interesting because you mentioned McCary and his right tackle experience. There's a guy that's on the Fan that comes on every Friday or something. Who's on with
Caller?
No, he's on. He's obviously somebody that La Canfora has brought on. He's a former scout, and midway through the season, I think when the snap problem started, he said, "Move McCary to right tackle and bring Colon Castillo in at center." And he thought that was their best alignment at that moment. Not that it was great, but he thought that it was their best alignment. And I had not realized actually that McCary graded so well in his short time at right tackle. Obviously, a real small sample.
Will Holden was the highest graded individual there, and good guy. Very interesting story, by the way. We're hopefully going to have him on a podcast coming up real soon. But I can't look at McCary's time at right tackle and really give it a lot of weight. He's a very short arm guy, and that's a big problem at that position.
Right. Well, apparently played in college.
I played left tackle in Cal.
Played left tackle. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, who knows? But I just feel like the center is not on this roster. But that's again, it comes to cap. If this was a full cap year, I would say the center is not on the roster right now. But they may have to go with what they have, and cross their fingers that one of them takes a step up.
the team has lots of needs. And obviously, one of the nice things about the draft is going into it with as many possibilities positionally as needs as possible. So it would be nice to have outside linebacker, center, wide receiver all be needs so that you're not reaching for a player or getting less when you trade down. Either one of those things. You might not get good economy. And I'm a big fan of that. So they can, if the longer they can push this off, the better. But part of me is saying, boy, if they have 4 choices here at center that are effectively in-house, because they can have Skura back for a song at this point. He's not going to command any money. Plus the 3 of these guys, you've got a good percentage chance to solve your center problem without using your number 1 draft pick and getting Creed Humphrey, say, who is an excellent prospect, probably good chance to be a Pro Bowler, but you've got big problems to address at outside linebacker, for example. Boy, you give up on that. I'd rather them just defer it till after the draft, figure it out then, have the maximum choices.
And wasn't Bozeman, he played center in college.
Yeah, and again, he's too...
For some reason they're not. Or maybe
he's too valuable at left guard. Yeah. I mean, he drives the Ravens' power run game. He's been a very successful puller. I don't see them moving him. I think he's there permanently now. Yeah. All right, let's keep down the list because this is an interesting list. Devin Duvernay, to me, he contributed as a receiver, as a gunner, as a punt returner at the end of the year, and a kickoff returner throughout the year. Those jobs, punt returner and kickoff returner, by the way, are not high capacity jobs at this point. That's not a lot of. It's not a full time equivalency job. It's about a 0.2.
Right. Yeah.
So after 11 weeks, he was averaging 8.7 yards per target. He was targeted just 3 times for 2 yards in the last 7 games of the season. That included the playoffs. He lost a lot of snaps to Des Bryant during that time. How on earth did that happen, first of all? But second of all, where are you on the Duvernay side of things?
I like him. I think, I mean, obviously the speed is obvious. It seemed, earlier in the year, when you're running jet sweeps and things like, you can't run them all the time. But when you look at like the Rams, Robert Woods runs a jet sweep once a game, and it's usually for pretty solid yards, So I would hope that becomes more of a part of the offense. And Willie Snead's a free agent. We'll get to him, but if he's not back, Duvernay seems like, the slot seemed to be his, what he's being groomed for. Plus that creates a little more speed out of the slot too, which I love Willie Snead and I love his blocking and his toughness. But Duvernay over the long haul should be an upgrade. So and he does. And obviously he's got the little kick that he, when he gets a chance to return the ball. He did really well. So he was a better punt returner than Prochet was, and Prochet was basically drafted to be the punt returner. So I'm high on him in that I'm hopeful, I guess.
Yeah, I'm excited about it too. I think you make a great point about Snead in the slot because Snead really plays a lot like a tight end in this offense. He's a bigger guy. They run him inside and use him as a blocker out of motion, but also when they have him at tight end, he's a sit down in the zone kind of guy. Done a great job of that, but he's not a run down field and score a touchdown. Not very often anyway. So Duvernay gives you a little bit more there. We talked a little bit about Hill earlier this year. Obviously, he's really found a niche for himself as a gunner on special teams, but he only had 5 catches in 2020. It was all 5 balls that were thrown to him. That's good, but he also only had 12 carries for 60 yards. Nothing wrong with that, but just too small an opportunity set for a 4th-round draft pick in his 3rd year now, in his second year.
Yeah, second year. He flashed a little last year. But obviously, with Dobbins being able to catch the ball a little better too, that certainly doesn't help him. Obviously blitz pickup could be an issue. I think that's been if he can show that he can do that, then he gets more of opportunity. Because Dobbins, I don't think did a particularly good job of that. Whereas that was something Ingram was really good at. But he's flashed so little. Maybe he'll get more of a chance this year. He obviously got buried because he was 4th in line, and he'll be seemingly be third in line, so he should get a few more opportunities. But yeah, I'm not sure he's going to get enough opportunities to shine through that you're thinking he's going to be something that's going to be a hit or be here for the future either.
Right, and all NFL players, have to not hope for this. That's the wrong word, but benefit from this when it comes up. Is he's never been in there. Sorry, he's never been in a spot where an injury is going to create an opportunity for him. This year he's fourth, and he could have moved up to third, and did, and he got a few snaps from that. But the first year, his first year, he also had the problem that the guys in front of him, Edwards and Ingram, didn't get hurt. And this year it was that Edwards and Dobbins didn't get hurt. It's never happened for him. All right, two other interesting guys to talk about: Phillips and Powers, who are competing for that right guard spot. Powers, I think, is clearly the incumbent right now, and he's played a lot of consecutive games. I think he's earned some trust from what's happened. Phillips, unfortunately, difficult rookie year, being split between two positions didn't help, but he really didn't play either well.
No, and obviously, they have to decide as part of, their draft philosophy, I guess, is he the swing tackle of the future, or do they need to look, and to be honest with you, they may need to look at their swing tackle, not of the future, but of the 2021 season, who's going to be the right tackle in 2022. Mm-hmm. So it may be more than a swing tackle they're looking for. They may be looking for a legit right tackle, knowing that if Stanley gets hurt again, Brown can move over at least for next year. So, and grooming that guy to be ready to step in if they don't re-sign Brown.
Yeah, interesting position this year with him and Fluker both continuing to exchange snaps. And there were times when Fluker was outplaying him, and then Fluker would go into a little bit of a rut as well, including the last 3 games of the year. He scored an F all 3 times in my system and about a half a play. But Phillips had his down periods too. It's interesting that neither of those guys could just really secure the job from the other.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, they'll have Andre Smith next year. Do you even have him on here?
I did not put him on there, but I forgot he is returning from COVID. Yeah, but he should be a veteran playing for market value.
But I don't know how a year off, and I mean, weight was always an issue with him, so who knows? But that's one, I think, area that last off season they did not end up addressing very well. They tried to band-aid it with the swing tackle spot with a rookie, and Fluker was really brought in to be a guard more than anything. And then obviously the Smith opted out, but I'm not sure they were really expecting Smith to how much they were expecting from him in the first place.
This is interesting because DeAndre Thomas is not on here either. Okay, so the Ravens roster does not include the 2 COVID opt-out
they
players.
Did release Thomas.
Okay, so it's just Smith. So maybe is it possible they've released Smith?
No, not that I've seen.
Okay,
what are you looking at?
What I did is I took directly from the Ravens roster because I want to make sure even the smaller names that are on futures deals and whatnot, I got every single one. And the Ravens updated this roster within the last couple of days because they had it split out into all the groups of reserve COVID and reserve everything else, injured, practice squad, etc. Now it's just one roster.
Okay.
All right. So they're usually pretty good about not making mistakes with their roster, but they might have missed one here.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, I'll check while we're talking, but I'm pretty sure he still shows up on NFLPA as under contract. So.
Okay. Yeah, it's good. That's obviously would be a better source for that.
Yeah, I mean, the Ravens site can have its issues at times.
We didn't mention James Prochet, obviously lost the punt returner job. This is a weird situation, but he has targeted 3 times on the season. 2 of those were pick sixes against the Steelers. And the third one was a completion on third down. I don't know what's going to happen to him, but something, they've got to either, basically use him or lose him here, I would think, pretty quickly. Probably is playing for a job in camp. Obviously, if they get a draft pick, he might be a guy that could end up on the practice squad.
Yeah, I mean, he could, and obviously I think a part of that part will depend on Duvernay's usage next year. If they're using Duvernay a lot more on the offense, if he's getting a lot more snaps, that at least for punt returns, they may return that for Prochet because I mean, he was specifically drafted to be the punt returner. I mean, they were going to grab him the round before, but the guy I remember who they got in the 5th, but I guess it was Washington was there, and they weren't expecting it, so they put it off for another round, and Prochet was still there, which may be telling they were going to draft him in the 5th, and he was still there in the 6th. But so I mean, a lot of that I think will depend on Prochet, on Duvernay's usage. And yes, Andre Smith is still under contract for next year.
Interesting. Okay, I think the total amount of guaranteed money is fairly small on that deal, like 25,000 or so.
Yeah.
So the last name on the developmental list is a very interesting one. Obviously, the events of the last few days have elevated Nick Moore to a developmental guy, and he's going to be around. I mean, they obviously protected him for most of the year on the practice squad. Not that that really means anything, because every Monday there's a chance to select off there. But Nick Moore, or every Thursday when your Ravens are playing their games on Wednesday, we won't get up too much into that. But Nick Moore is the guy they clearly want at long snapper now. They've let Cox go. The Wolfpack hasn't had any new blood in about 9 years.
Yeah, I mean, Tucker was a rookie in 12, so yeah.
So anyway.
I mean, it was an interesting move. I think Jeff Zrebeck reported that there were other teams sniffing around him, and when it came time to sign the futures contract, he's like, well, maybe I'll wait it out. So he kind of forced their hand to make a decision. It's not really cap related, because I don't think any long snappers getting much more than the minimum this year, even one as good as Cox, on the market. So you're only talking at when you use that veteran salary reduction, you're only looking at $300,000-400,000 difference. So it's not a cap move to not bring Cox back. It's clearly, we want to, and I think DaCosta said it. They felt it was time to get younger, and not that long snappers can't snap till they're 80, but
You're not allowed to touch them pretty much on the long snap. They got to be able to get up to touch Polamalu trying to hurdle him.
And obviously they liked Moore a lot, because as you mentioned, that they did protect him, so that if during the week somebody, it makes sense. I mean, you long snap. I don't know. You can find I think I'd rather have a punter off the street than a long snapper off the street. I don't, place kicker not so much, but maybe. But of course we got Tucker anyway. But yeah, I mean, and well, they'll have Townsend as a backup punter this year too already. So assuming they offer him a exclusive rights free agent offer, so which there's no reason not to. So they'll have a lot of depth there. But yeah, I mean, they clearly wanted more, and it was time for Cox to go, I guess.
Yeah, so the last 5 years, the cap numbers for Cox have been over $1 million every year. $1,040,000, $1,140,000, $1,240,000, $1,240,000. So if it's a rookie playing in that position, he's what, $700,000 or so?
Yeah, Moore's going to make about $700,000, and Cox on a veteran deal would take him down. I mean, he would make over $1 million, but his cap number on one of the veteran, and now he could be one of the 4-year qualifying players, so they could pay him more. They could pay him a little more, but as opposed to like $900,000, they could get him up to about 1.1. So you're looking at $200,000 to $400,000 difference in the cap. So it's not really that. I don't think it was driven by the cap.
The veteran benefit is usually shown on OTC, but I don't see it on Cox's thing. Is it possibly because his contract was signed years ago?
Yeah. His was a 3 or 4 year deal, if I remember the one he's coming off of. Yeah. So the veteran, either the 4-year qualifying player or the veteran salary benefit, they have to be 1-year deals.
Okay.
They can
Terrific.
only be 1-year deals.
See, that's why. Just tag at Ravens salary cap to any question you have, and he understands any kind of nuance to this. But make sure you get that done. Let's go on to the veterans playing for market value. Now we got some interesting things coming up here. Nick Boyle is the first name on the list, obviously one of the interesting ones. And I'm just going to remind people of Brian's estimate from last episode, that boy, if there is a surprise cut, He thinks 50% Boyle, 22% Williams, 18% Peters, 10% Campbell. Still comfortable with those numbers?
Yeah.
It was a long time ago.
I know, yeah. I'll fix that.
So anyway, Nick Boyle, definitely one of the possibilities for a surprise cut. What might trigger a surprise cut from Nick Boyle? Would they see him in OTAs, say, ooh, he's not moving around the way we'd hope by now? What would it be?
No, I mean, if it's going to be a surprise cut, it's going to happen before that. It's going to happen in March when they need cap space. And that's, this of all years especially, it's a puzzle. They're going to, I mean, right now I'm projecting to have, with no other moves, and then just tendering Edwards with the RFA tender, and then tendering their exclusive rights free agents. That'll drop that. That's going to drop it into that 7 range. So you mentioned over the cap has them at 14. I've got them at 13, but that's only because they're using 176 as the cap, and I'm using 175 now. So obviously, cap goes up to 180. You get 5 more there, but that's still not going to be enough. Because you're talking 7 to 8, maybe. And if there's no extra 5 there, you're still at 7 and 8. So they're going to have to. They got a lot of work to do. And like I said, they're going to be trying to find cap space everywhere. And that's why
everybody's in this position. I mean, we talked about this a little bit in the last show, but the Ravens have a high percentage of the total league overage.
Right, but there are teams that are going to have 50, and that are, they were going to have closer to 100, obviously, but there are going to be some teams that are going to have cash to spend. But most teams are going to be, even teams that are in the middle of the pack like the Ravens, you still, when you look at OTC, there's things that aren't there yet. Just a week ago, when I put my article out, they were at like 26. And that's why I'm saying, well, when you add in the when you add in the Andrews, at that point Andrews was not added in, the escalator, and Browns wasn't, and Elliott's wasn't, and Bozeman's weren't. So, all of a sudden, there's another 8-9 million down, and that's where we're getting to, and a couple other things, and we only have 40 players on the roster at that point.
Sure.
Before they sign guys. So right there, that was another 7 million. So all of a sudden, you're going from 30 down to 13.
So what's the amount of roster cap space that you expect the Ravens to have at the beginning of a year to have a good chance to get through it? 5 million, 6 million, at kind of a minimum?
5 probably. 5. I mean, you'd rather have more, but I think 5 is sort of your minimum without having to potentially redo a contract. And this year it's going to be tough because they may have redone a bunch already. Now. And it's all going to depend on where the cap is. Not to get too technical, but the big issue is going to be the salary cap is set by revenue from the prior year. So if, God forbid, the revenue for the other years, for this past year, says the cap is supposed to be 140 million, then they're going to have to borrow from future years just to get to 175.
And do you see any way they don't do that? Do you see any way the owners say, I'll tell you what, just to keep the peace here, or maybe in exchange for other pension concessions or things like that, we'll fund you 20 million of that. Well, but you're going to have to give up.
Well, they've already done that. There's side letters. There's a COVID side letter and there was a cap side letter. That's where they agreed that the floor would be the 175. So it's going to depend. Now, if revenue comes in at 170, and they put the floor at 175, then they can probably borrow to 190 maybe. Because now,
I'm asking a different question, Brian. So let me go back to it because I know you know this.
They're not going to give money up. The owners are not giving money up.
Now, I agree they won't give up money as a percentage of revenue. They want that number to stay the same. My question is, would they plug it for 1 year in exchange for something like pension concessions of equal or greater value?
Well, so they've already, part of the plan for next year is the players are already giving up as part of getting the floor. Which leads me to believe they're expecting it to be below that floor.
Right.
They've already given up a lot of their benefits. So the salary cap has 2 components. When we talk about the salary cap, we always talk about the actual just salaries, but there's a benefits part of the salary cap. So when the salary cap is calculated, So, for instance, last year it was the salary cap that we talk about was 198.2. The salary cap was really 240. The 50, or the roughly 40, I should say, is benefits, pension, health insurance, all kinds of things. So that we don't talk about that as this quote unquote salary cap. We just focus on the money that's being paid, that's actually going out as salary and this calculation. But the cap itself is larger. So what they've already agreed to is to get to the 175 floor for the what we call the salary cap. They've already given up benefits to say we'll get there. Now that can be subject to renegotiation, of course.
There you go. And so there's always, I would think, an impetus for players who are currently coming up to a contract year to want to have more of the dollars pushed into current contracts than are into benefits. A player on the early years of their contract has no interest in that whatsoever right now, a first or second year player. Yeah. There's no difference in the voting, right? It's one man, one vote across the entire NFL. Okay, so there could be arm twisting from some of the elder statesmen within the locker room, but I one of the things that's always interested me is how do they do the voting there? Is it done in secret? Do they or do they do everybody knows how everybody else voted?
I think it's done I think it's even done by email or some. I think these days it's actually done. It's not even done in person, so I don't think anybody knows what anybody else. I'm guessing it's done in private.
Okay, so that really would be an interesting thing because unions have used that in the past to coerce their membership into doing certain things. All right, interesting stuff. So Nick Boyle, first name, DJ Fluker. I think the chance is not zero that he'll be back in Baltimore. And the Ravens just don't have their tackle problem resolved. He was not terrible at times. They never really gave him the chance at guard that might have really worked out also. There's a lot of things that I could see still liking about his versatility there, and he's cheap as hell because not going to make any more next year than he did last year.
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of guys on this list that fall into that category where if I'm going to play for the same thing and I'm getting the same opportunity, I might as well stay right where I am. Now he doesn't have a long history here. Certainly, guys with longer histories that fits more for. But let's face it. I mean, everybody reports that all the stories are that the Ravens are a well-run organization who treat their players well, and the castle's beautiful. And while Harbaugh can be a hard ass, he's certainly.
At the Ohio Lottery, we wondered if we could recreate perfection. So we re-engineered the revolutionary $10, $50, $100, $500 scratch-off into a companion scratch-off. The new $5, $25, $50, $250. More compact, more accessible, 3 equally flawless increments of prizes. $25, $50, and $250. Play $50, $100, $500, and $25, $50, $250 and experience winning in its cleanest form. Lottery players are subject to Ohio laws and commission regulations. Please play responsibly.
This year has reminded us of the importance of saving for the unexpected. And as a bank, our job is to make that a little easier for everyone. That's why at Huntington, we're so proud to introduce Money Scout. It analyzes your checking account to find money that's not being used and moves it to your savings automatically. It's that simple, so you can always be saving, even now. Learn more and enroll at huntington.com/moneyscout. Huntington. Welcome. Money Scout is subject to eligibility, terms and conditions, and other account agreements. Member FDIC.
Mellowed on that some, so practices aren't, like some teams. So I think that's probably. I think that weighs in their benefit for guys like this, or especially for this year. If the cap is going to stay down, I might get a little more if it was a different year. But if I got to play for the same thing, then I might as well stay here. I'm comfortable here, and I know the guys and they know me, and hopefully I can improve on it. And it's a better opportunity. That culture trust that you're alluding to could extend beyond the organization too, and allow them to bring in some guys. Oh, sure. Who would feel the same way. Sam Cook, I don't think we need to talk about. We haven't in 15 years, right? Patrick Ricard on one thing on Cook, every year, every time, this year, every year, we got to cut Cook. He's paid too much. I don't get it. while they're better, they're kickers that kick longer and get Pro Bowl bids, and our offenses have always been good getting the ball to the 50 at least, and so he's punting it, trying to keep it out of the end zone. So he doesn't get as many long kicks, it seems, with his team. But he's one of the best in history, and obviously he's really good at all the different styles of kicks, some of which I think he's invented. So. I don't, and his salary's guaranteed this year, so he's not going anywhere.
Is it? I didn't see that on Overcap, but
if not all of it, most of it is, yeah.
Okay, the OTC still shows a $2.1 million savings for a cut, so it's a little surprising.
Maybe it's guaranteed for injury, perhaps.
Okay. I think we talk about all the ways that Cook is valuable, and you're right about all the different directional punting styles are really something new, but he's the greatest holder of all time.
Well, and there's that too. Yeah, absolutely.
And I wouldn't want to mess up Tucker. Patrick Ricard now, he's entering year 3 of a 3-year deal, right? Signed at 18, extended, or does he have one more? Signed through 22 or 21?
He signed just through the end of this year. Yeah, this season.
Okay. So big part of the offense, really played a lot of snaps once they had the additional injury to Boyle, really greatly increased his snaps at fullback / inline tight end. I guess we don't need to really say anything about it. No, there's no restructure, pay cut, maybe an extension for him?
An extension would certainly be possible. I think he would be a guy they would perhaps look to. He'd probably, because he's younger. I guess Boyle's not that old either, but he might be a guy for dummy years. But I would think he'd be more of a thought of extending. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Willie Snead, I don't really see a lot of likelihood that he comes back, but you never know. The bargain bin is going to be fairly full this year, and come that time, there will be a lot of probably some interest in players who haven't been signed by the deadline for comp pick consideration.
Yeah, my guess is, he's not going to make what he made this year anywhere, and they're going to be there's now a threshold with the comp picks. I'm pretty sure last year, because I looked this up just this week, if it was under $2 million on average. That was right around the cutoff line where you didn't even qualify anymore. I'm not sure he's going to get a contract that averages $2 million.
With the lower COVID cap, is what happens to that?
Well, that's going to I guess that could drive that number down some. Yes, but obviously there's still a lot of contracts out there that are past contracts. So because it looks at all of the league-wide contracts and it creates a threshold. And so if and I can't remember the numbers, but Nick Corti at On Over the Cap does a really good. If anybody's got a handle on it, he does. In fact, I was looking at that earlier, and I was looking at that for the 4 guys that the 4 teams that are getting third-round picks, comp picks, and he's already added that in, and he's got the Ravens one in there already too. But he does a really good job of explaining those thresholds and the percentages. And the new CBA finally gave us some detail to that, because it's always been under the radar thing. It's never been, it's in writing somewhere, but it's never been done publicly.
Okay. A couple more names here. Ronnie Stanley and Justin Tucker, we're going to just pass by. They're going to be Ravens for life. Tucker is signed through when? 23? 24?
I believe that's right, yeah, because he just re-signed two falls ago, or 2 springs ago.
Okay, so hopefully, frankly, he goes to the Hall of Fame and never has any other consideration for playing for another team.
Right.
Eric Tomlinson is an interesting player, because I thought he blocked very well at the end of the year, and he might be a guy the Ravens would want to keep around. He's a vet min guy. The Ravens get any kind of benefit at this point. He's a free agent. He's been in the league for 5 years. Is there any benefit that they can get that's beyond the normal vet contract? What do you call it? Vet benefit?
Yeah, now, I think he would be the veteran salary benefit guy. Especially if Boyle doesn't come back, maybe he slides into that, that blocking. Did Tomlinson ever have a catch?
No.
Yeah, I don't even think he was thrown to.
Yeah, he might. I'll check if he had a target.
Yeah. But so I'm not sure, what kind of hands he has. if he does. Obviously, the tight end they brought up before him didn't work out very well, and obviously should have caught the touchdown. Was that against Pittsburgh?
He had one target against Jacksonville. It was not caught.
And I'm trying to remember the name of the guy from Seattle.
Wilson.
Wilson, right, that had a chance to catch a touchdown, and it was late in the game, and I'm trying to remember who it was against. But
yeah, it was late in the half. It was the end of the first half against,
Pittsburgh.
and he had a couple catches.
Yeah,
but
that was against Pittsburgh. He should have caught that. Yeah. So I think, I mean, he's a guy they should be able to get back if they want him, and he might fit in. They're going to need another pass catching tight end, but he could, especially if Boyle's not here, or if Boyle's not ready, then maybe they could. Then maybe he's a guy to have around, and again, he's another one of those guys. If he doesn't make the 53, so be it.
All right. Veteran cap value concerns. I have nobody on this list, but Nick Boyle would be the closest on the offense. This offense is run on a historical low level for how good it is in particular. The value, points relative to cap, or EPA per play relative to cap, any way you want to look at it, these last two Ravens years have been remarkable in terms of the value they've gotten for spending almost nothing.
Yeah, I mean, and Stanley was the only one, and that was, that was to happen during the season, and other than that, I guess it was
Boyle.
Boyle and Ingram. Those were the only guys. I think those would have been pretty much. Oh, and Snead, but Snead
Yondo last year.
Yeah, I mean they were, yes, and Yondo, but they were the only ones making more that that weren't on rookie deals basically.
Mm-hmm. Just fantastic deal, but it's very rare that we would have no one who really fits into this category. But you and I think, are agreeing in the notion that Boyle is probably the most likely that they might cut for cap space. It would be unfortunate if it happened. I'd much rather it be just a lower structured deal somehow, or an extension, but it is what it is.
And something we haven't mentioned, but a guy like Boyle would be a possibility there as well, is, you're coming off of an injury, you need to take a pay cut, and if we cut you loose, is anybody going to give you $3 million this year coming off of an injury? Mm-hmm. It's a terrible way to have to deal with it, but I think there are going to be guys that are going to be asked for pay cuts, and this year especially. A lot of times they ask for a pay cut, and player thinks, well, I can do better on the market. I'll just decline. But this may be the year that players are really forced to take a lot of pay cuts around the league.
All right, I'm going to go through the list of 17 transitional names. I want you to just kind of think about them for a moment. They have some similarities, and maybe give me your best bets of who may emerge from this category. But they're all, a lot of these futures guy, practice squad guys: Jake Breland, a tight end; Des Bryant, Deion Kane, Sean Culkin, another tight end; Parker Anger, offensive lineman; Greg Mance, recent signing, actually started 16 games, I think, for the Texans as a rookie; Trace McSorley, Jordan Mills, who's played some tackle; Chris Moore, Jaylon Moore, the wide receiver; R.J. Prince, backup lineman; Matt Skura, Johnny Townsend, Antoine Wesley. I have DeAndre White on here, but I think the Ravens actually have already gotten rid of him. Tyson Williams and Eli Wolf. Bunch of different wide receivers, a few offensive linemen, and tight ends. That's basically what this group is on the offense. There's only one running back. There's Trace McSorley is the only quarterback on the list. It's an interesting group. Who do you think might make the team or might become a contributor? Because there's still some young players here. Yeah,
well, I mean, I think the one that really sticks out is, and obviously McSorley's going to get the chance, whether they carry 3 next year or he and Huntley battle it out for the backup. Certainly that's one name that sticks out. You mentioned Skura. I think, there's a decent chance because there's not going to be much of a market, and he's one of those guys. I've been here 4 years. I'll just, stick it out here another. And that'll depend if they go, if they go veteran free agent center, then, they probably won't bring Skura back. But he's a name, since he's a free agent, that could come back. Tyson Williams is an interesting name. He was a guy they wanted to sign initially in their initial group of undrafted free agents, but he was injured, and I guess they basically said, once you're healthy again, we'll sign you. They really liked him. Obviously, we never got a chance to see him because we didn't see preseason, but he's certainly a name that, they could, especially because, they might need a fourth running back, or if one of the backs gets hurt and he's on the practice squad, they could see him, you could see him become a guy who, hopefully would flash. And then I guess you're looking at the tight ends. Culkin's more of a veteran, so I'm not sure he would be back. But Breland and Wolf, as undrafted free agents, both got, I believe they were the two highest signing bonuses for undrafted free agents and guaranteed money, along with the center, Castillo. So
Right.
so I mean, they thought highly of them. Breland was hurt, so he sat out the whole year. And then Wolf actually was on the practice squad and got hurt, so he was on IR for a little while too.
Okay, another nuanced question related to this. Obviously, a lot of these guys were activated, and actually fewer of these guys. It's more on the defense. A lot of the guys were activated for that Pittsburgh game from COVID. Did that start the clock for all those guys, or was there a special exemption from that they don't accrue a year of service?
Yeah, they normally wouldn't. Normally it takes 3 years to accrue your year of service. Under the COVID rules, the COVID amendments, it was one game. Did I say 3 years? It's three games to accrue a year.
Okay.
Accrue a year. So, but under the COVID rules, they changed it to one. So interestingly, because there's a thing called an accrued year, which is timed towards free agency, but there's also a thing called a credited year, which affects your salary. So they did not get a credited year. So all of these guys would come in still under the first year rookie salary.
Okay, so first year rookie salary, still 4 years in Baltimore?
Well, no, it would be three. It would be 3 more years. The accrued one is so for cap purposes, it's better that they did not get the credited season, because that means another roughly 75 to 100,000 per year, which would be, all these guys would be getting, that would be adding to the cap. So they get a higher salary. So they don't get the higher salary, but they do get the accrued year, which means they'll be free agents sooner.
Okay, so everyone who played in that Pittsburgh game, who that was their only NFL experience, which is not an inconsiderable number of players, might be 4 or 5 guys in this category. Those guys are all going to be RFAs in 2023 and UFAs in 2024. Be the fourth year, be 23 because 20.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and without that, it would be 1 more year after that.
Well, they'd still be in limbo because they wouldn't have that first year.
They don't have any. Yeah, they wouldn't have any accrued seasons yet. Yes. Yeah.
The Ravens still have a few guys like that. Like who was the classic guy who stayed around forever? It was Bennett Jackson, who didn't play until like 6 years after he was drafted.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Wonderful stuff as always doing this with you. I just love doing this show with you, Brian. I appreciate you coming on again. Tell people where they can find your work.
Sure. So on Twitter at Raven Salary Cap, I try to, when things are happening, especially this time of year, I try to be on there with the numbers as quickly as I can, as quickly as we can get them. National media is helpful often, and then sometimes the nuanced parts will come out a little later, and we'll get the full numbers together. And then, my articles are on Russell Street Report. Just last week put out the preview of the cap for this year. Those numbers will change, obviously, over time, and they're going to make a lot of moves. For some reason, this year I had to spend a lot of time explaining, and I probably need to go back and look at the article, because I usually try to make it clear this is the starting point before they start making moves, because they're clearly going to need cap space. But this is just try to explain. They're going to have to make a lot, especially this year. They're going to have to do a lot of different things to create cap space. But so that's where my work is, and like I said, when things start happening, especially, I'm pretty darn active.
Okay, at Raven Salary Cap on Twitter. To me, that's the easiest way to get him. But when you're asking questions about the salary cap, add him to it. I'm not going to know. You heard his specific nuanced knowledge is very exceptional in terms of these side letters that have been written. I mean, first time I'd ever heard about those. A lot of your other things about exactly how money is accounted for and the guys who were active under COVID and the one game rule this year. He's your guy. Make sure that if you're asking me a question on Twitter about the salary cap, you use his @ symbol as well. Make sure he's tagged on it. Brian, so much a pleasure having you on again.
Absolutely, always.
All right, my friend. We'll talk to you next time.
Sounds good.
On Film Study.
This year has reminded us of the importance of saving for the unexpected. And as a bank, our job is to make that a little easier for everyone. That's why at Huntington, we're so proud to introduce Money Scout. It analyzes your checking account to find money that's not being used and moves it to your savings automatically. It's that simple, so you can always be saving, even now. Learn more and enroll at huntington.com/moneyscout. Huntington. Welcome. Money Scout is subject to eligibility, terms and conditions, and other account agreements. Member FDIC.
15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Is that Shakespeare?
Nope, it's Geico.
Yeah, that's Shakespeare from one of his unpublished works. Oh, it be not for awakening. Nay, giveth thou the berries. For 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Nope, it's from Geico, because they help save people money.
Well, I hate to break it to you, but Geico got it from Shakespeare.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.